and we are still going ahead.
Oh, you are? Okay, I didn't know the race was on.
Well, conditions, many conditions.
Yeah.
Ontario has to allow gatherings of 100.
Okay.
So we're doing really well up here.
That's great. Yeah. Canada seems as a whole, I don't know. You can get people to actually band together and do things, which is something that hasn't really been working so much with American mentality. So
Yes.
Yeah.
hopefully that changes here. We got to definitely. I don't even think we can get into Canada right now, can we? This is as
No.
close as I'm going to get to Canada.
Yeah.
All right, we're just waiting for a few more to join us.
How do I do?
All right. Oh, there's one more. Awesome. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is well. Just welcome to another edition of Runversations, and thank you for joining us on Zoom tonight. If you don't know me, my name is Paul Hubahib. I run the social media platforms for the Niagara Falls International Marathon. In a moment, I will introduce our guest, and if you have a question for him, please message me in the chat box, and I'll let you know when it's your turn to ask. If you are not speaking, if you can just please mute yourself so that the background noise can be kept down to a minimum, and we can hear everybody that's asking their questions. Okay. So in saying that, I want to introduce our guest today. He is considered a legend in the ultra running and the running community. He is a 7-time winner of the Western States 100-mile endurance run, a feat he accomplished 7 consecutive years from 1999 to 2005. He is a 2-time winner of the 135-mile Badwater ultramarathon. In 2015, he set the Appalachian Trail Speed Record of 46 days, 8 hours and 7 minutes, which was averaging about 50 miles per day. And if you don't know, the Appalachian Trail is about 2,189 miles from Georgia all the way up to Maine. He's a best-selling author, he's a husband, and he's a proud father. Please welcome Scott.
Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Scott. We appreciate you not coming across the border, doing it.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was going to say. This is as close to Canada as I'm going to get probably for who knows how long. So as I mentioned, yeah, love Canada, and I've been up a bunch. I grew up very close to the border, a couple hours away. So yeah, it feels a little weird that, we can't be as close neighbors. So we got to do this virtually, I guess.
Well, and we appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us and just talk about your career, answer any of the questions that any of the people have. So, but before we begin, how have you and your family been during this pandemic?
Yeah, it's been interesting. Like you mentioned, I've got 2 kids and 2 little kids, so a 2 and a 4-year-old. So it's definitely anybody out there who's got young toddlers or any children for that matter. I guess it gets a little easier. Maybe it's a little different problems, but yeah, having a 2 and 4-year-old right now during the pandemic has added elements, just the whole element too of work. Somebody that has a career of speaking and being in front of crowds and going to events. It's unfortunate, and it's a tough time, but thankfully we're all healthy, and we have a lot to be thankful for. So I know there's people that are struggling out there, and my heart goes out to everyone who's just grinding away right now. It's definitely interesting times, but we're holding up there. I mean, running wise, I've been getting out quite a bit and staying fairly fit despite everything that's been going on. But yeah, we lose our babysitter next week. She's moving back to New Jersey, so we're kind of trying to make up our most of our time right now. But yeah, we're back to the grind of having 2 toddlers 24/7. So
That's good. Well, and they're a ton of fun. I know that I have my own children, so I know they're fun. So
yeah, there's a lot of fun. Just right now, if you ask anybody when you're hunkered down, I mean, we've been getting out a lot too, out in the woods and mountains, and they love being outside. And I think that's the biggest thing right now. We're thankful that we can get out and be on the trails and the mountains and having open space around. But I know some places it's a little bit tighter when you especially live in the city. So we're thankful to have some open space to roam, so to speak.
For sure, for sure. And so you must hear, when you do a lot of these conversations, you must hear the word legend associated with you a lot because of your career. And what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I hear that term thrown out there, not only with myself, but with other individuals. And it's always something again, I always reserve it for somebody. Sometimes I'm like, am I really a legend? And yeah, am I comfortable with that? Because I've accomplished, quite a bit in the ultra running realm. And I've, been fortunate enough to compete around the globe and have a lot of success. But yeah, legend is something that for me, I don't know. It's a tricky, it's a double-edged sword. I feel like, honored that people would think of me as somebody esteemed like that. And sometimes I'm like, should you be alive if you're a legend? Like, is that somebody like, so yeah, I don't know if people say a living legend, but yeah, it's always a term that's kind of tough. As much as very appreciative of the title that people would bestow upon me, but at the same time, I feel like I'm just like everyone else out there. I've had some success in a sport that I love, right. And I love to be out running and doing stuff in the mountains and in the woods, and it's been an amazing ride. But yeah, it's interesting. Legend is something that's like, what is a legend? And I feel like somebody who inspires others. I'm a big believer in giving back. So not only are my performances important, but I feel like what I do out in the community, and that's what's really hard right now, is not being able to connect with people besides virtually, being at events. And I know you guys put on an amazing race up there in Canada, running such a social sport more than we actually give it credit for. So that's something that I love to do. And I feel like, legend or no legend, I just want to be out there in the community doing what I love to do, despite getting older now and not as fast.
I think you're probably still as fast as me, so don't worry about that. So you talked about how you had a lot of amazing accomplishments in your career. Did you ever envision that this is how it would unfold for you? I mean, you're a North Minnesota guy. You always talk about how you hunt and fish. Was this something that you saw down the road?
Yeah, anybody who's familiar with Eat and Run would, or read a little bit of my life story. I was not destined to be a runner. In fact, I used to hate running. Running was something I did to stay in shape for other sports. And, in high school, I wanted to be a game warden. So was like, in terms of, here I am now, a vegan and an ultra runner. So two things that seemed so far out of the possibility. And that's what I think is important about life, is that we constantly are learning, expose ourselves to different ideas and different people. And that's what the sport of ultra running has done for me, is it's introduced me to a group of people and individuals that I probably would never have contact with. So I'm thankful for, what it's provided. And I still love, learning, and I'm not going to stop learning and just taking that in different directions. So those of you who are out there who are new runners or maybe kind of in a rut right now, it's always an interesting thing. It just ebbs and flows. And I think as long as you stick with it and find ways to keep you inspired, running is pretty phenomenal. So yeah, I would never have anticipated it. And again, too, those of you not familiar, like ultra running is not, it's not a sport that you think, oh, I'm going to go professional and make a bunch of money, or this is going to be my job. I always had a day job until the latter part of my career. And even then I had my own coaching business. So, and my own PT physiotherapy business. So it wasn't really, I never really thought that, okay, I'm going to make a living at running, or I'm going to write books and speak to a lot of people. It was just something I loved to do, and just followed that passion and kept doing it alongside of, credit card debt and not expecting the sport to return much back to me. And I think that's what's most important. I think when you follow a passion, do it for the reasons that you love to do it, and who knows where it will take you.
So we talked about just at the beginning how you won 7 consecutive Western States endurance runs. And I remember reading in your book how there was I think it was your third race, that you hurt your ankle pretty bad on mile 44, and you still had 56 miles to go, and you still won in your fastest time. And so I'm kind of wondering, what was the thought process of really getting over that type of adversity?
I think, the biggest thing for me, and I write in more detail in Eat and Run, so those that want to hear the nitty gritty, but like if I were to, I guess, put it in a nutshell, basically, one of the biggest things when we have something, the beauty of an ultramarathon is that I always like to say you can you can come back from extreme depths in terms of places where like you can turn things around, and you can always redeem yourself in an ultramarathon. Maybe you can't always like make up 5 hours or turn around and win a race or PR after you've lost a lot of time. But the beauty of it is that you can, over 100 miles, a lot can happen and a lot can turn around as well. And for me, right away, I had to have those emotions that most people have. Like I was, in my head, just cursing myself and thinking like, why did I land on that rock weird? Like just give myself that time to have a little pity party. And then right away, just after the emotions and after all the just, self-doubt and talk in my head of like, I've prepared for this race. I was going for my third win. Let all of that just evaporate after a while, like let myself have that emotional pity party, and then start to figure out how can I get through this, and just kind of mentally going through that process of figuring out, okay, how can I conserve energy? How can I put less weight on my injured side? Because I wasn't going to miraculously, air cast it, tape it. There's nothing out there in the woods or mountains for me to do that. And I wasn't going to see my crew for a while. So it was a matter of like figuring out how can I get through this? And as a PT, luckily I knew that, okay, even though it's going to hurt a lot, I'm probably going to be able to, as long as I don't re-sprain it, I'm probably going to be able to run on it still. It was just a matter of like, how much pain could I endure? And the beauty of running an ultramarathon, there's so many other types of discomfort going on that sometimes the ankle wasn't the worst of the pain that I was experiencing. So getting over that and just really mentally getting in the right mindset of like, okay, how am I going to get through this? And then just start not thinking about the pain that was in my ankle and just go for that record and go for that, personal best and the win eventually. But it's hard to do that when you're in third place, people are passing you, and it seems like I'm not going to be able to turn things around.
Well, after your 7th win, less than 2 weeks later, you're running your first Badwater ultramarathon, and that's 135 miles. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. And that's, I don't know if it was one of those crazy back-to-backs I tried to do. Again, I think it's one of those things a lot of people look at and, why would you want to do that? And Badwater was something I always wanted to experience. They used to call it the toughest foot race on the planet. And I thought this would be a great way to experience it. I didn't always think I'd do it right after Western States, but it just worked out that way that year. And I thought, okay, let's see if I can pull it off less than 2 weeks prior after running and winning the Western States 100. And I think, again, I'd been doing ultras for a while. I understood my body, wasn't going to destroy it, but it definitely was a graduate level type of experience. I wouldn't encourage people to do like, 100-mile race and then less than 2 weeks try an 135-mile race. People link those things together. But for me, it was a challenge I'd always wanted to do. And I wanted to see, like, could my body bounce back? I think that's the big thing, is my body did bounce back. I was able to recover and perform well enough to win and set a new course record at Badwater.
Diane, you had a question?
Yeah.
Hey, Scott. So I don't know if I'm going to draw on your physiotherapy background or ultra running, but do you think we can rebound in running from any injury? Like I have osteoarthritis in one knee. My surgeon did say in my last surgery 2 years ago, that's it for you for running. And I was devastated. But 2 years later, I am running. I used to run ultras. I don't know if I would run ultras again.
It's a great question. And as a physio, and again, I'm not trying to be your healthcare provider here, so make sure that you're taking the advice of somebody. It's tricky because osteoarthritis is one of those injuries I wouldn't recommend people just run bone on bone. When you've unfortunately, when you've worn down enough cartilage in a joint, whether it's a knee, a hip, it doesn't regenerate. I know they do have some, they're doing some Synvisc type injections, and there's definitely some, I guess, maybe hopeful technology and medical treatment down the road. But osteoarthritis is one of those where I try to tell people, if you can run and your doctor isn't telling you like, you're on bone and the pain's only going to get worse. I really try to tell people to dial back their expectations. So for you, for instance, you found a way to work with your injury. And like you said, the things that are going to bother it are the really long stuff, stuff on, possibly concrete, like get on softer surfaces, or play around with different shoes that alleviate some of that discomfort, and find a way that you can still enjoy the sport. But to be honest, yeah, osteoarthritis, stress fractures, bone breaks, these are all things that I wouldn't run through. A ligament injury, again, is something that you can recover from. But when it comes to bone on bone, any of you out there know that whether it's running 3 days a week and biking or swimming or doing other activities, and I've had friends where unfortunately they've had to get a knee replacement or a hip replacement. And one, the good and the bad, like I've had a friend who had a hip replacement, was still able to do some triathlons, shorter courses, nothing running very long or running on pavement in terms of like marathon distance. So I'd recommend, like, if you're going to get a joint replacement and you're going to do that young, be very cautious, because that's going to wear out even quicker than a human joint. So I don't advocate running on a hip replacement or a knee replacement, but I know people that do, and they do it very smart. Like, it's one race per year and they run a little bit, but they're really smart about doing their rehab in terms of strengthening the muscles around there. So I guess can't say enough. Strengthen. Those of you who have bad knees, bad hips, or bad joints out there, or if you're somebody like Diane who's got osteoarthritis and has been told, hey, you need a joint replacement, you got to strengthen like crazy, because the strength of the muscles surrounding the joint are what's going to lessen the impact of that joint. So, and it's the biggest thing. Runners don't love to do it because they'd rather be running most of the time. So just be careful. And yeah,
Thank you.
I'm not advocating running on joint replacements or running on osteoarthritis or severe bone on bone, but find a way that you can do it that keeps you happy, keeps you connected to the community, and incorporate some cross training too. I think that's the biggest change. Yeah, I have some older buddies that are in their 50s now. They ran and raced in my generation. They're part of, like, I don't know, us guys in our 40s and 50s, and unfortunately a couple of them are going to need a joint replacement, but they still have their 26 consecutive Bostons going on, and they're like, I can't get a joint replacement. So it's one of those things to be very cautious and smart, and talk to your healthcare provider or somebody who's going to be sympathetic to it, and just be smart. Because yeah, joint replacements, I mean, you only are advised typically to get 2 in a lifetime. And I've heard some people, like, try to go for their 3rd, and it's just, yeah, be very careful of that too.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, hang in there.
Hey, Mar, you had a question?
Yes. Scott, first of all, I'm very excited that you're on. Actually, on my big TV, I'm watching you doing the trail.
No.
Yeah, so
I'm living large up there.
Oh my God, it's getting me so pumped up. I just want to go out there and do a trail.
Oh, great.
I haven't done a lot of trail running, like with Paul, actually done just a little bit, maybe 12 Ks and stuff like that. But I just want to know, what would you suggest someone just starting off trail running, and because it's way different than road running. So I just want to know, if I want to start getting more mileage, after 12, more than 12 kilometers, increasing that, what would you suggest?
So the biggest thing with getting into trail running, if you have a good base of regular distance running and you're somebody who's been doing it for a while, you'll probably be totally fine. But if you don't get on trail surfaces regularly, and I know most of you up in Ontario, right? Are we speaking to, well, we got some folks from maybe around Canada and even across the border in the US, but wherever you are, if you're relatively close to where Niagara Marathon is, you're probably on really rocky, rooty terrain. And I think that's the biggest thing for you, Amar, is doing strengthening or getting on that rocky and rooty terrain in dosages where you can get stronger and become more adapted to that. So I'd say get on trails, even if it means, like, you pop on a road run and like there's a little section of 1 mile trail. It may not be like your epic run, but you're trying to get a little bit of trail running, sprinkled throughout the week. And if you're somebody who has like an urban trail that's a little bit more technical, or run on grass, or, I even run on the side of the road where it's, maybe it's not the best, like, don't sprain ankles, but get out there and, get on some dirt and uneven surfaces so you're strengthening your foot and ankle. And that's really the best thing you can do for trail running, is get conditioned to the type of surface you're going to be on. The other issue is the terrain, because where you guys are, the trails are short and steep. You don't have huge mountains, but The biggest thing is if you're not on hills regularly that go up and down really quickly and in a short duration, they drop a lot of elevation gain and descent. The biggest thing there is get your body accustomed to that. And there are things you can do in the gym and at home for the foot and ankle for strengthening. Lunges, one-legged squats, even dual-legged squats are great. One-legged standing balance, getting on a wobble board or BAPS board for your foot and ankle. Those are all exercises, and there's a ton of stuff out there. Anything functional where you're on one leg, working on your proprioception is really going to help you for the trail running. So yeah, those would be my tips. And then replicate what you're doing for terrain. So if you're somebody who runs on a treadmill, but doesn't get on the trails very often, put that treadmill up on a steep incline and get used to what it's going to feel like going up at a steep incline. And don't be afraid to walk. I think a lot of marathoners, half marathoners, road runners, they worry, one, of spraining their ankle. And the other thing, they're like, well, what if I can't run all the time? Does that mean I'm not a trail runner? Us ultra runners walk a lot, and we do learn how to power walk a lot. So don't be afraid to walk when you're on your trail run. I think some people are like, oh, I'm only on a 10K trail run. If you're on steep and technical terrain, be okay with walking a little bit and getting used to that terrain and being comfortable with like what's best for your fitness and your conditioning. So
I just have one other thing is that I noticed that on the video that I'm watching, you're using the sticks to go through. I have never really seen that before. Is that something you would encourage using those? So
yeah, so trekking poles or or wizard sticks, as some people call them, or whatever you want to call them, sticks. They're definitely helpful for really steep terrain. And then the downside, when you see on me on the Appalachian Trail, because it was so technical and I was putting in 50 miles a day, my body was just toast, particularly on these stretches, middle of the night when you don't have light. So anytime like you're in the dark or you're at the end of a run or you're doing big miles, sometimes you can even use them on the downhills for balance, and they can slow you down though too. So I always am, cautious to tell people, oh yeah, use, sticks or trekking poles, because then you don't actually work your foot and ankle and your muscles as much to stabilize. So the biggest thing with downhills is get more comfortable. But if it allows you to get down a downhill and you practice on, okay, I'm going to run this a little harder and faster. And if you're just tapping with the trekking poles, that's great. But the biggest reason we use them is performance. Is like now you have 4 legs instead of 2. And yes, it does work your upper body. Yes, it brings your heart rate up. But if it can get you up the hill a little bit more efficient. I mean, think about if you had handrails up a steep climb or a steep hill, would you use it? Most people would. You see like people on their treadmills grabbing the handles all the time. So they can help you, but if you're not using them properly, they can also slow you down a little bit or possibly be a little bit more energy consumption. So yeah, play around with them. They're not like it's not going to make you a better trail runner automatically, but they can help.
Awesome.
Great questions.
Question. Sarah, you had a question?
Yes. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Super pumped to meet you virtually. I've read your books and I followed your work, and I'm going to fangirl out a little bit. But my question is, I know that you said you weren't always destined to be an ultra runner, and then you got into it. My question is, I myself have just gotten into ultra running in the past couple of years, but I do obstacle course racing, so OCR ultras, mainly Spartan races, but some of the other ones as well. My question for you is, would you ever consider doing something like that, transitioning, not all the time, but would you ever consider doing an ultra OCR race? Is that something that you would be interested in?
Thanks for the question, and thanks for the comments at the beginning, Sarah. Yeah, it's interesting. I actually went out, my buddy Luis Escobar, those of you that follow me on social media, I don't post a ton, but I actually checked out, he was race directing for some trail series races that were part of a Spartan race series. And so I actually went out and I actually tried a couple of the obstacles just for fun. And it's definitely super challenging. And I can see how people get into it because there's so much functional movement and strength involved with it. And I've been actually during like the beginning part of this year and then all through COVID, I've been doing more. I'm a big believer in upper body strength in addition to leg strength. So for those runners out there who don't do any strengthening, I think it's an advantage when you are doing some form of strengthening. So individuals that are into whether it's Spartan or OCR stuff, I think are definitely more balanced athletes. And at this point in my career, yeah, it would have been good for me to like focus on OCR at the peak of my career. I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, Max King, he was able to do a bit of both and then still do fast road races and still fast ultras. But I definitely feel like I'd have to focus on so much upper body stuff. It's pretty, and functional strength, which is great, but it's definitely intriguing. And I've been doing some more, my wife and I have been doing this class that's more of a strength endurance conditioning class where it combines higher intensity stuff, partly because we have kids and we have an hour to work out. Sometimes it's combining all those elements that are helpful. So yeah, I've been always intrigued by it, but I don't know if I'll be turned into an OCR competitor.
It's never too late. You could always
exactly.
It, right? And they have the shorter ones. You don't have to do the ultras. They have the
That's true. I'd be doing a lot of burpees, that's for sure. I'd be taking a lot of penalties on that. But yeah, if it involves spear throwing mainly, I think I could hold my own there because I definitely tried that when I tried that portion, and I was able to. People are like, "Whoa, you can throw a spear pretty well." So I feel like my hunting and fishing background would help me on that front.
That and up your grip training. My coach is also on the call, and he's probably cringing because I don't do my grip as often as I should. So
yeah, grips. I mean, I was doing pull-ups the other day, and like during this COVID time, bought a pull-up bar, and Jenny my wife is a climber, so we have a hangboard. But yeah, it's one thing like just having the grip strength to do some of the activities that are required. But I think it's great, and it's great for people to like combine running with something else. So all of you are like need some kind of jump start or something different for your running. The OCR stuff I think is great from at whole body conditioning. And we all know this, but those of us who sit for work or don't have jobs who are out there using strength, you lose it quickly, starting at the age of 20 to 25 if you're not working it. So definitely helps from that standpoint. So I'm all about functional strength training, and combining it with running is a great way to do it. And that's what trail running is to me. It's like, it's combining, functional movements of, getting on a trail and, navigating that trail with your body. And it's definitely, we don't have to like climb ropes or anything like that or do serious stuff like the OCR, but it's a little bit more, like I say, cross training for running.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, Hey, Scott, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi, Paul.
Yeah, excellent. So nice to talk to you. I too am kind of a bit of a fanboy, I guess, in my life. Your books or books you were in have like fallen into my life at the right times. I read Born to Run right before I did Horton's Holiday Lake Race.
That's great.
So, yeah, and then your book came out right after I finished school, and then when I was working my first full-time job, you were doing the Appalachian, so I was following you on Instagram then, and so there was definitely some harrowing nights waiting in between some of your posts. Sure. So and anyway, I've just picked up North, and I haven't actually read the detailed account, so I'm looking forward to
awesome
to that as well. So it's really nice to speak to you first and foremost. And yeah, so I was wondering with the Appalachian Trail, just because in comparison to all the other events you've done where you've had to really bounce back, and when you look at yourself, when you look at your bodies, I don't want to use the word degradation, but I guess kind of the assault that you put on your body through that time, was that the longest and hardest bounce back, or was it just a completely different animal? And then the second part to that is, in terms of ultra endurance events or kind of epic outings, is there anything that you have in your back pocket or anything that you're planning like for your career now, or are you feeling more just that you can kind of wrap things up a little?
Sit on the couch and just drink beer and watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll tackle your second question first. I definitely have a few more ambitions. I mean, definitely, I'm getting older. I'm not going to lie. I'm 46 now. And all my younger friends remind me of like, the gray hair on my head. And I feel good physically, like my body can still I still have a couple adventure runs I want to pull off, even with the kids right now. But the last few years I've been focusing, it's kind of crazy. Like coming up here this weekend will be 5 years since I did the AT. Yeah, and I always thought I'd be doing another epic long run like that really close. In fact, when I finished, everyone's like, what are you doing next year? Are you going to do another one? It took me a while to recover mentally as much as physically, just because it was I put my, body, mind, and soul through an intense ordeal. And I think, it was really healthy for me to take that time to recover. And the last couple of years now, I've been itching to do some. In fact, I did have something planned for this year. Unfortunately, I had to postpone it with COVID taking place and such. So yeah, to answer that question, I did have something. It's still under wraps, and you'll know about it at some point. Hopefully we can do it next year. Yeah, it's a tricky time. All of you who have been had all these plans for races and your own goals, it's definitely tricky, but at the same time, life goes on, and we'll find a way to pull the way through.
Yeah, you plan to
yeah. So yeah, as big as what I did on the AT. And, to answer your first part of the question, there was nothing like I did doing what I did on the AT. Those of you who've read North, get a fuller picture of that, but there's just nothing that compares. And when I got off the trail, I even had a little bit of, a lot of people talk about this like post finishing an event depression, or you're not having a goal to look forward to. Like, I couldn't wait to go home and sit on my couch and do nothing after like that period. There was part of me, yes, that was sad that it finished, because it was such a focus for me, and I had my my life revolved around just running, eating, drinking, like the basic necessities. Still trying to be connected to Jenny and, be a couple and have somewhat of this bond. But it was the most I'd ever focused on running, like so intensely. And at the same time, I had amazing times out there where, it felt like nothing else mattered and it was all I wanted to be doing. But it was very tough physically. I mean, the sleep deprivation was next level. 2 weeks, I was getting on an average, 2-3 hours a night. And, for most of the trip, I was getting 5 to 6 hours. I'd never gotten, now I have kids and realized the next level of sleep deprivation. But it was, to be putting my body physically through that on top of the sleep deprivation, and then mentally, like just waking up every day thinking like, I'm going to go out and do this again and again and again and again. And so I definitely, for months after that endeavor, even though my body felt pretty good, my mind was not in the right place to like even think about doing something like that. So I feel like it took me 6 months to 8 months to just feel normal again. I even had like, nightmares and like some PTSD where I thought I was still sleeping on the trail, like just, even a week or two after I finished. It was pretty wild. Like, so, and then again, amazing memories. Like I look back at the misery and the tough times with fondness right now. And Jenny and I sometimes like, we'd love to go back to there, especially when you have 2 toddlers running around. Be like, it'd be a lot easier to go out on the Appalachian Trail right now. Or from the standpoint of just, writing a book about it, it was way easier I think, to be out there running and just hiking on the trail than trying to write about it. But it was a process we enjoyed as well.
Right on. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good question.
Thank you, Paul. Henry, you had a question?
Question again has to do with the Appalachian Trail. And I love trail running, and you excited me about doing the Appalachian Trail myself. So my question is for a piece of advice on whether to go from south to north or north to south. What would you suggest?
Well, if you're going to be out there, and have you read North yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Well, you have to read it because I go into why I went north, and everybody's different and has their own personal reasons. At the time, all the records, the previous 3 records were set going southbound. And I definitely was kind of bucking the system to go northbound, but I always wanted to finish on Katahdin. I always had this vision of, you read the books by the original thru hikers like Earl Schaefer. They always had this philosophy of walking with spring. And you literally, start in the south when spring is about to erupt and start. And then you just walk with spring as you go until it turns, hot and humid up in the Northeast or wherever you get before it turns hot and humid. And I think that's just a surreal thing. I didn't get to experience that because it took me 46 days. But if you're going to through hike it, I would have to say you got to go northbound. There's more people that go northbound. I think there's maybe 200 people that go southbound. So if you want solitude and you want to just pass people, head on and say hi and bye and maybe catch them at a shelter, I'd say you could go southbound. I feel like the southbounders are an interesting breed outside of people setting records, but they just generally don't get to see as many people. Not as many people are hiking that direction. So I feel like if you want the full through hiker experience, and if you want to walk with, the season of spring, definitely say northbound. And there's nothing like Katahdin. I mean, Springer Mountain is special for sure, but it's a pile of rocks in the trees. Whereas finishing on Katahdin, those of you, who live up in Ontario, have been on some of those peaks up in the northeast of the U.S. It's pretty phenomenal. So yeah, I'd highly recommend it. And for those of you thinking about, I can't take months off to do the AT or whatever trail in Canada you want to do, like doing sections of it too is pretty remarkable. I talk about that in North with Jenny. We're on the 20-year plan for the Pacific Crest Trail. Got a lot of miles and a lot of years to go, but we're doing it in sections, and now we'll have to start taking the kids on them, so it'll get interesting. But that's another great way to experience, being a through hiker for a week or 2 weeks or whatever time you can take off. So don't wait until you're, retired or school is done or in between, like, whenever you can do it. But a lot of people do wait until those life, changes or life aligns that you can do it. But section hiking is a great way to go and kind of experience that life. So highly recommend that. Thank
you, Henry. And so, Scott, what I've noticed from your accomplishments is that each one seems to be progressively getting harder and more challenging. Is that intentional? Are you always looking for a way to push those boundaries?
I guess, it is, that sense of self-exploration. And yes, I feel like sometimes the harder things are a way of, I guess, digging out of me those depths that I didn't think I could go. And so I don't think things have to be harder, but I think they need to be tweaked a bit. And for instance, like the Appalachian Trail, I did things different. I at times wasn't really doing things strategically for a record. I stopped and talked to people. I signed books. I took photos with people. I hung out at trail shelters and, talked to people and just, signed the trail log. And because I wanted to do it, the way that I wanted to do it and have that experience. And so sometimes I think harder, it happens to be that, yes, a lot of things I've done have gotten, they bump up in terms of the effort level and the psychological level. Like running around less than 1 mile loop for 24 hours was something I never thought I would do. Thought it always sounded kind of cool, but it's good to do the things that are super hard. And I think that's what ultras or running a marathon or half marathon or whatever it is, doing OCR competitions. It's good to push ourselves. Like I think humans and society today, life can get pretty comfortable. And I think, always look for things to challenge myself. I'm looking forward to maybe not pushing myself as hard as I have over the years. And I can still go to a race. I think the good thing is have those moments where you go slow, run with your slower friend, pick a race that you're not going to focus on a PR, and do things because you want to do them because of aesthetic reasons or some kind of other reason outside of performance. Because I think, there's the times to go fast and hard and push it. And then other times just go out and enjoy the run for the run itself and for the experience. But I'm a big proponent of, do the difficult things, try, getting into this uncomfortable place, because that's when I think the magic happens for me. Just when I think I've gone to the edge, like on the AT, I thought, there's no way I can withstand more sleep deprivation, more pain, more suffering, just more challenge. And then I'd get to the edge and it's like, no, there's a further edge out there for me. So, and we're all different. We all have our own edges. So you don't have to go and do the Appalachian Trail in 46 days. You can find that maybe in your half marathon or 10K or whatever goal that you have. I have buddies that, aren't ultra runners. They've dabbled, they've done ultra events for sure, but they do a little bit. And every year I have one buddy who wants to run a 400 under 60 seconds, and he goes out and trains every year for that, and he wants to keep doing it as long as he can, keep his speed. And he's an 800 meter guy. So I think it's like finding those challenges. And right now during COVID and this pandemic, people have had to get creative to like find those challenges because the races aren't there. That sounds like, Niagara is going to be around. So maybe you're okay.
You kind of touched on your 24-hour race back in 2010. And correct me if I'm wrong, 165 miles in 24 hours, which is roughly around 6.5 marathons. And if I remember correctly, your loop was just under a mile.
Yes.
So you're consistently doing a loop for 165 miles. And to me, I think that talks about your mental strength to just be able to deal with that type of, short course and the length of time that you ran as well.
Yeah, I call 24-hour races. I haven't done a 48. Don't really plan to. I stop when I stop at one full 24-hour period. But there are people. I've been out running longer than 24 hours before. But there are people that do 48-hour, 6-day races. But I call all of those races like the PhD level race running races, because they take away that element of like reaching a point or destination. You can always drop, like you see your crew every mile or whatever distance it is. And it's so easy to jump in the car and go home at any point. It's not like, oh, I need to get to the next aid station over this mountain. And then, sometimes like, hey, we don't pick up people here. We don't bring you home. Like, or you might have a crew member who's like, no, we're not going to like bring, like, you got to keep going. So in a 24-hour race, you're passing, your crew all the time. And it can get really hard mentally to just stay in a zone and stay focused on things. And the other thing too is you don't have a finish line pulling you. It's not like there's a space out there or something that you can kind of finitely see, oh, I'm going to get to that point, or I just need to get to this section. You're just adding up miles. And yeah, it's definitely, there's nothing else like it. And those of you that want to experience it, there's 6-hour races, there's 4-hour races out there where you run around a loop. And I tried doing one around a track, and that just blew my brains apart. So a 400-meter track is like next level. I think I got 17 hours in and just like lost it. So yeah, it's interesting. And that's changing direction every, I think 6 hours is what they did on that track on that race.
Amazing.
But,
it's amazing. Yeah. I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention how you went from a fast food kind of diet to vegetarian in 97, then right to vegan in 99. It really has been a game changer for you with regards to your running, hasn't it?
Definitely has. And those that want to delve into that more, there's a great documentary that you can get on Netflix. I believe they let Canadians watch it as well, called The Game Changers, which I was featured. And those of you who want to see footage from the Appalachian Trail, there was a film crew that followed me for the Appalachian Trail for that film. And I'm one of the athletes that's featured in there in terms of vegetarian and vegan. And actually, it's focused on plant-based and vegan athletes. But yeah, it's definitely been an interesting ride for a guy that grew up eating meat and potatoes, hunting and fishing. My mother worked for the Minnesota Egg Council, which was part of the whole campaign of the incredible edible egg. And just, there's nothing I think in my past that would have prepared me to think, okay, I'm going to be vegan. And I think the biggest thing is when you're on a journey, we're all on our own journeys in life. I think being open to new ideas, and that's something that I came across it when I was in grad school, actually, and just realizing like I got to take better care of my health, not because I wanted to be a better runner and thought it would increase my performance, but I wanted to avoid the chronic disease I saw in the hospitals where I was working as a physical therapist. Seeing my mother have multiple sclerosis and seeing a chronic disease in a family and just see it really wreak havoc on the family unit. And then seeing, aunts and uncles and others having issues with health made me just realize like I want to protect mine and take care of it as much as possible. And I think that's what really got me thinking about health and wellness, and it happened to help my performance as well from the recovery standpoint. And I think consistency too. At least I feel pretty young and vibrant at 46 now, and doing some of the things that I've done over the years. So I'd like to say like, yeah, taking a look at all aspects. I know runners out there, some of us just love to run and that's it. We look forward to downing fast food, but there came a point in time for me that I just needed to like look at all aspects of health. And for me, I wanted to really look at it. It's been amazing. Like it's been a fun journey. It's not like, oh, I've turned myself into this, ascetic, ultra running vegan that, doesn't have fun, doesn't enjoy food. It's been a great journey, and one that I'm passing down to my kids, and they love to eat all kinds of ethnic food, and they're Asian American, and so they get introduced to all these foods because I love eating a wide range of ethnic foods and just preparing it. So it's really, I guess, brought the best things out of I think food and culture and just the social habits that we have around food. So it's been a big passion of mine, something that I hope to keep passing on to others.
And how's the chef skills with regards to all the vegan stuff?
Yeah, they're pretty good. I have all my fingers still. I've got a lot of vegetables in my day. And yeah, as I mentioned in Eat and Run and my books, people know I had a mother who was a home ec major. So we were cooking a lot of Betty Crocker style recipes in the house. And as she was not able to prepare food due to her illness and not even able to stir things, and she was dropping things, we had to start cooking meals at a very young age. I remember, 7, 8, 9 years old making meals for the family because I had a younger brother and sister. So I was kind of forced into it, but then I also had these great mentors like my aunts and uncles, my grandparents. They made all this fresh food. My grandma was a big bread baker. She was always making food for people that would stop over, and just always watch her like whip out a meal. She'd pull things out of the freezer. She's a classic Polish grandma who would have a meal ready in like a matter of like 15 minutes. She'd have like this spread, and whoever came in the door, she was always feeding them. And it's been fun to kind of continue that tradition and find ways to prepare food in unique ways that people love to come and enjoy. And I think that's what I enjoy doing, is sharing that with other people. I think that's the beauty of food. I'm not one of these vegans who's just like, you should be vegan. I try to win them over by something fun and something tasty that I prepared.
Yeah. Many people have talked about how you're a type of ambassador for the sport. And one of the things that a lot of people mention is about how you wait at finish lines just to see all the runners come in, And then you've also, you've guided blind runners on races. You've gone to a lot of expos. Is that your way of giving back to the running community?
Yeah, I think, and I mentioned earlier, like giving back has been something, I guess I've always just done it because the one thing about the ultra community is that these races don't take place at a very early in my career. I was out volunteering because these races were just, it'd be a handful of people putting them on. And if it weren't for volunteers, local people and people from, throughout the ultra running community, they wouldn't have happened. And I just kind of started the sport where I had some mentors who were race directors like David Horton, and I'd go around with all these different race directors back when I was getting my travel paid to go and go to these races and do demos and stuff. And so I'd hang out at races for hours and hours talking to people at finish lines and talking about shoes that I was sponsored by, and then just seeing like how much was put into a race. And I think for me it was like second nature. Like I want to be able to help because I get to enjoy some of these races because there's a lot of people out there doing the same thing. And so it just kind of fell into my, I guess nature that, we all help out. And that's what I love about the running community is, for the most part, there's people who go to the race, they just take off after, don't want to have anything to do with other people, and that's fine. But generally speaking, it's a community event, and ultras are the epitome of that because they are so much more smaller and just tight knit. And that's, we'd camp out before the race. We'd camp out after the race. We'd have beers after. Like we definitely gave each other a hard time and raced each other into the ground. But it was all about like that community development. And that's what I love about the sport too. And finding ways to, I guess, enjoy it from another angle has been helpful, such as guiding, for instance. I got into guiding, I think like 5-6 years ago. My mother did have some issues with her eyesight due to MS, but didn't have any real close friends who were visually impaired or blind, but just got into it. And it's been something that's been phenomenal because seeing a race course from like Boston, for instance, I've guided friends in New York City Marathon, and some of these races I've never run for myself, but seeing it from the standpoint of helping somebody else see and be their eyes is a phenomenal experience. And so again, those of you out there who are looking for that next goal, maybe it's something where, you're volunteering, you're providing help, because I think it's great from the standpoint of seeing running from a different, I guess, perspective is what's, I guess, most important, because sometimes we can get caught up in our PRs and our own personal goals, but finding those ways to, I guess, again, experience it for yourself. And anybody who's done that will, tell you time and time again that they got more out of the experience sometimes than the person they helped out, whether it's, pacing or crewing somebody. And then of course, doing something like guiding, it's phenomenal. So yeah. Or, I know a lot of you are coaches out there, help out with youth running groups and things like that, but it's such a rewarding experience. So I feel like, you get more than you almost, give typically in that experience. And the finish line thing just happened because I would sleep at the finish line at Western States. So I would be there anyways. And, I'd finish pretty early, and, there'd be another 15 hours practically of people coming in, and I'd just, get up when I'd see my buddies, but then it was like, I might as well stay for the whole thing. And it was just fun to be there, and it relived that experience. So I think, finish lines are great because you see the people coming in and just the joy, the suffering, just the range of emotions coming through that finish line. And there's just nothing else like it. You only get to experience it for seconds or minutes yourself. So
Sure.
great way to experience is hang out by the finish line.
And so sometimes the success of our running is really due in part to the people around us. How important has Jenny been to be by your side?
Well, something like the AT was like next level. Without her being by my side, physically doing all the things she had to do, strategically handling all the, the crew details and just all the little pieces that had to come together, there was no way I would have been able to do something. But more than anything, she was like another brain for me, much like my friends who came, because at the end, she couldn't force me out of the van to suffer more each day. She was like, okay, like at first she was giving me a hard time, and as you read North know, like, she can be a hard ass, and that's, why, we work well together. Like she's, I think a good friend or a partner can tell you, when you're full of crap and when you need to, like, suck it up and get out there. And Jenny's great at doing that. And then there was a point where she couldn't even do that as somebody who loved me and as a partner. She just couldn't see me go out and suffer more. So I had to bring in reinforcements, and my friends that, hadn't been out there for 40 plus days like her, they had to come in and help out do that. And so I think that's where the dynamic is, working together as a team, because it was such a team effort without her helping and realizing like how important this goal was to me. And I think, now the reversal, the person who asked earlier about what's next on my schedule, I've had 5 years to pay back Jenny for the 46 days and all the stuff that she did out on the trail. So I've been at a lot of races where I'm taking care of the kids and she's running the races and doing that, which I've enjoyed too. So again, I think it's always that balance. Those of you who have a significant other or a friend who you help out in crew, or you help in races, or, it's really a fine balance of making sure that you each give each other that time to make sure, you're tackling your own goals and being selfless and help each other out. Cause sometimes it can be all about one person. And I think that's what's been great about Jenny is we work well as a team, and ideally we're both helping each other along the way. It's a growing experience for sure. It's not always easy.
Take care of Castle Black while you're out running too, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's, there's a lot that needs to happen. Like, she was trying to get laundry done every few days. She would have to get ice, and restock in this crappy cooler that I'd brought that was way too old, probably should have been updated prior to the trip. A lot of these elements that, we didn't have windows in the van, didn't have a fan. It was just a cargo van with, the front windows, the passenger and the driver windows, and that was it. And it's, humid and hot down in the south and all through the mid-Atlantic states. So it was pretty brutal, where she was just having to deal with all it. And then she had to find like where I was going to be based on maps. So she, and to do that for 46 days was pretty incredible. Most people have a crew that rotates, and you have people that do 2-week increments or kind of split it up. And she was out there for the whole thing. And like I said, it was a wild experience, and could not have done it without her. And I think we grew stronger after it. We could have definitely destroyed each other. A lot of people like something like that would be a recipe for divorce court, or maybe not the best for a relationship. But we came through it stronger, and we definitely have those moments where we're just like, we're both at the end of our rope, just barely hanging on.
Awesome. All right. I do want to keep my promise to you. We'll get you out of here by 9. At the end of our Runversations, we usually ask our guests a series of questions, just quick questions, and then some quick answers from you, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So
awesome.
That's our spotlight guy here. All right. Number 1, what's harder, an ultramarathon or fatherhood?
Fatherhood, definitely. Sorry, can you tell? We're just in a tougher spot right now. So sorry, those of you like think I'm bagging on parenthood right now, but we're just in a tough spot. A 2 and a 4-year-old.
No judgment here. No judgment here. Favorite place you've ever run?
I'd have to say I was fortunate enough to be in the Himalaya a few years ago when Jenny was climbing Mont Blanc, and just being in the Khumbu region, like the scale of those mountains is just unreal. That in the Alps, the 2 places I've been where I just felt so small. That in the San Juans. So I'm giving you 3. Sorry, 3 answers. So the San Juans of Colorado for America, and then for in terms of other places, Nepal, and I'd have to say the Alps too. They're pretty phenomenal places.
Awesome. True or false? At one point during the Appalachian Trail, you actually fell asleep while running.
True.
True.
Yeah.
Did you
can be done. I've done it in other races as well. Spartahlon. Those of you who read Eat and Run know, like I used to laugh at when people say, "Oh, I fell asleep during running," but can totally happen. That's a sign I'm probably not running hard enough.
Your mom would have pancake Sundays. Is that still a tradition in your home?
It is. Yeah. Those of you that follow on Instagram and stuff, I'll post from time to time, just, different pancakes, or we have to branch out and do waffles and French toast and other things. But we try to keep that going here with the kids. It's fun. It's something they look forward to and they get involved in it. And it's, again, one of those social interactions I think are great from a meal standpoint.
Any worst hallucinations ever while running?
The worst one was when I was running Western States one year. I swore that I saw the second place runner, who was probably like 20, 30 minutes behind me at that point. Could have swore that he was like just down one switchback. I looked back a few times. I'm like, no, I see it. And my buddy who was running with me and pacing, Brandon, he was like, there's nobody around. There's nobody for like 20, 30 minutes. But I was convinced for at least 20 minutes that somebody was back there. So I ran extra fast during that stretch.
Other people, hallucinate, animals and stuff. You actually hallucinate other runners.
Yeah, exactly. So you can tell where my mind is most of the time in terms of, I've had a few instances. Those of you who read Eat and Run, read the chapter on Spartahlon. You'll get another great hallucination story.
2 or 3 words you hope future ultra runners describe, Scott Jurek.
I always hate these ones that are like, oh, how do you, I don't know, like what's on my tombstone or what's on my, gravestone, or like, well, how would I guess, I've always been somebody who's made time for people at events, at races, wherever I am. And I just, I want to be like any other runner out there and just being personal. So yeah, I guess personal, down to earth, and humble would be the 3 words I'd probably put there.
Do you ever miss McDonald's? And what was your favorite meal?
It's interesting. There's a reason why people get hooked on fast food. I have to say, I mentioned this in Eat and Run, I think, but basically chicken sandwiches, McChicken sandwiches, deep fried, were my favorite. I remember downing 2 of those, sometimes 3. And my other favorite was sausage egg biscuits were my go-to, especially on road trips or traveling. Breakfast. But I've been able to replicate both of those pretty good. And those who, if you want to, find that, you definitely whether it's Veggie Grill or some of the fast food veggie restaurants. I don't do it often, but it's fun for nostalgic reasons to have one of those veggie chicken sandwiches. And they're pretty close to the same thing. It's pretty surprising. It's kind of scary when you think about it. And you can get them in freezer sections too. Like you're like, this is not chicken. It's shocking.
Any funny nicknames you've gotten over your career?
Well, I'll talk trail names. I don't know if it's funny, but one of the names that I really was surprised by was Web Walker out on the trail, because I was breaking spider webs both in the morning and at night. And one of the thru hikers up in New York was like, "Hey, you're Web Walker." And I'm a big Game of Thrones fan, so I love the Game of Thrones-esque aspect to that name. So Web Walker, it'd have to be. I don't know if it was funny, but I definitely thought it was a suitable trail name. So definitely Web Walker. In terms of funny, I'd have to say like Elvinado, the deer. Those of you who are red born to run know that I was nicknamed the deer. I definitely am not a deer. Anybody who's seen me run, I don't run that gracefully. So I know Caballo thought maybe because I was relatively fast, but I definitely am not fast enough nor graceful enough to be a deer. So I probably categorize that as like a funny nickname.
And last question, what would you say are some takeaways from your career?
I think one of the biggest ones is, as I mentioned earlier, I've always thought that, okay, I've done the hardest thing possible, or I've brought my body, mind, and soul to the edge, and, like, this is it, right? Like, I'm not going to be able to top that off. And the thing that this sport and this community has taught me is when I think I've gone to the edge, there's always a different edge out there. And it's been something that continually, time and time again. And then to reiterate what I said earlier is I like to say, if you stop learning, you stop living. And I still feel like, the reason I keep doing this sport and keep challenging myself, or keep getting out there and not just sit on the couch. Somebody earlier when I mentioned like just sitting on the couch and drinking beer, like as much as there's some days where it'd be like, you know, nice to do that. I'm like everyone else, even though I've been doing crazy things all my career athletically, there's still those times where it's just nice to sit down and not do anything and enjoy the time passing by. But again, I feel like there's still things to learn out there, and maybe I won't be pushing my body, breaking course records and winning these 100-mile races, but I always want to keep exploring and challenging myself. So yeah, keep finding that. So for me, and also like a vegetarian lifestyle, vegan lifestyle, like never thought I'd challenge myself that way. And I think just keep learning about, I guess, aspects too. And I think it would help a lot of humanity right now to be more open and just be understanding of other people out there and sympathetic. So I think we could use that especially this time.
Awesome. That is a really, really great message, Scott. And so I just want to say, you know, thank you for, you know, joining us. It's amazing that you were able to take the time with us. And I think I can say that a lot of us really see you as an inspiration for the things that you've done and how you've really shared all the, you know, the journeys that you have gone through and inspired us to actually have our own journey without being too scared about it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I could say out there, like, everybody is an inspiring people. You don't have to be winning races like me or doing these amazing feats. We all inspire, have an influence on others. And that's what I love about the sport. It's that coworker or that family member that you inspire to, whether they picked up running or they're like, whoa, like you do that? Well, maybe I could do this. And we all have that ability. So I just, you know, would tell everyone out there, like, yeah, you don't have to be doing crazy things. We all inspire people and all have that effect.
Right.
You don't have to have a bunch of followers on social media. You just, being in touch with the community and sharing your passion, I think, is what matters most out there.
Awesome. Great message, Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. We really appreciate you joining us here, and all of us wish you and your family well, especially as we move forward from the pandemic. And we hope to see you down the road. If you're ever in Niagara.
Yeah, I've never been to Niagara Falls. I know it's like it's something all Americans at some point try to do, but I've never seen the Niagara Falls, but definitely try to get out your way. It'd be phenomenal. And yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. Hopefully I didn't take up too much of your evening rambling about ultramarathoning, but it's been a pleasure. And yeah, I still have a little bit of my Canadian accent anytime I said about, hopefully, but yeah, so
awesome.
Thank you
so
all
much.
you Canadians up there. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
And hopefully you have a great race in October. Hope that happens. Be safe, everyone.
Yes.
Be healthy.
Thank
you.
you.
So much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Wow, that was really great.
That was good. Very good.
Doug. Hi, Doug. Hi, Joanne. Hi, Joanne.
Yeah.